Hey, Andrew. Catch! I gotta show you this wild video.
Cool. What's it about?
Well, global warming.
You know I don't count any of that.
Listen, Andrew, any of the arguments you can think of are going to be proven in this video.
Well, I'll watch it, but I won't be convinced. I know what I believe.
All right, well, let's take a look. Good thing we have these apples. It's gonna be a long video.
Well, first of all, I'm not a believer in global warming. I'm not a believer in man-made global warming. It could be warming, and it's going to start to cool at some point.
Over the grand scheme of the history of the world, the Earth has gone through a period of rapid cooling and heating. Obviously, the fluctuations in that have increased dramatically ever since humans have invented cars and anything that's, emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But as an overall thing, I don't believe that humans have adversely impacted the Earth to the fact that, we're all doomed. But definitely we are having effects on the fact that, we've had Hurricane Irma, Harvey, all these crazy storms coming through. Like, these storm systems don't just develop out of the blue. Like, there's definitely a cause and effect to it.
The IPCC, or us scientists, so to speak, did predict that this decade we've just had would be around 0.2 of a degree warmer than the decade of the 90s, and we were right. Other people predicted it would be either the same temperature or cooler than the 90s, and they were wrong.
The United States by itself produces 8,000 million metric tons of carbon emissions.
Look around. It's obviously changing the world. We've had, 4 or 5 hurricanes just within the past month or so. So there's obviously some sort of impacts that people have had on the environment, the extent of which I don't think can truly be known, but obviously something needs to be done about it. So.
Is it correct that the satellite data over the last 18 years demonstrate no significant warming?
No, the rate of increase has been lower, and it's not unexplained. There's a natural Pacific decadal oscillation, and the Pacific tropical temperature has not warmed during that period, and that's affected the global temperature.
I actually believe that there's consensus of scientists the world over, and that anyone who actually disagrees with climate change is in the very small minority of this consensus that's been built about not just American or not just one side or another, but a global viewpoint. Yeah.
Well, I'm an artist, so I'm thinking visually. I think that would be the ice caps, right? Most definitely. It's so you can't refute that. It's just there.
This might sound really basic, but it just feels hotter than it used to be. And I've seen some kind of data before where it shows how temperature used to be whenever there was just less carbon emissions. So that's definitive data that I've seen.
I don't agree with the notion that some are putting out there, including scientists, that somehow there are actions we can take today that would actually have an impact on what's happening in our climate.
Crucially, the IPCC reiterated that it's extremely likely that human influence is the dominant cause of the warming we've seen over the past 50 years.
Well, I'm just not convinced.
How? All the evidence is literally right in front of us.
Those are just random people from the union. How do we know they know what they're talking about?
Andrew, let's just keep watching.
All right.
We keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record. I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball. And that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
I don't really believe in climate change. So
Could you
I
tell?
don't think it's impacted.
Could you tell me one reason?
A reason?
Or talk about why you don't think so.
Why I don't think climate change is real? I have no idea. That's just always what I've been.
Okay, so if we scientists are so good at making these dire long-term predictions about the climate, how come we're so lousy about predicting the weather? Besides, this year, we had a colder winter in my town. For all the scientists know, we could be in for global cooling. Here's the difference between weather and climate. Weather is what the atmosphere does in the short term. Climate is the long-term average of the weather over a number of years.
I've heard that we've gotten an average of 10 inches less rainfall per year over the past 10 years, and that's probably due to climate change.
I'm curious what you think about climate change.
I do not think climate change is a national security threat.
The chief of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat.
Climate change is a huge threat because places like Houston or like a long time ago, like in Hurricane Katrina, like all those people lost their homes and people died. And it's a really big thing that can just change people's everyday life totally. So it's a huge threat that we should take serious.
To think about it together, because climate doesn't affect just one area, it affects every area.
I see it as a massive national security. Anything that could affect our world the way that climate change is already, as we can see with 2 massive hurricanes in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks, needs to be addressed. The money needs to go towards it, and we need to make sure we're funding it correctly.
Just the way the Earth rotates on its axis, how far away it is from us. These are all very complex things. Gravity, where did it come from?
Probably not very well. I don't really know much about it, except that I probably believe in climate change. Just because I think that having so many, the amount of output of, factories and cars and all that stuff has to have an effect, but I don't think most people do much research, so.
Probably can understand it better.
Yeah, probably not the best.
I don't know.
What we're talking about in this level of climate science is you don't need to be a full-time climate scientist to understand it. We're putting carbon dioxide in the air at a prodigious rate, and the world's getting warmer.
I think that it's more of an opinion. I don't know. I don't want to say I believe in it or don't believe in it, but I mean I know there's some evidence, but nothing's proven yet. So
I would say that opinion is something that a lot of people. It's a subjective thing. I think you can't objectively say that something is or isn't an opinion because that depends on the person that you're talking to. I think that science backs it up. That's my opinion, but I know other people have other opinions. And what I see as fact might not be fact to someone else, ergo it must be an opinion.
Climate change is not science, it's religion.
Well, I'm glad you've got something you think's important, but this is just people stating their opinions. I don't buy it at all.
Andrew, after all the scientists just stated all those facts, if that can't convince you, I don't know what can.
Well, Mariah, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Aw.
Well, later.